Hello everyone. So today I thought we would swatch my Holbein watercolor palette. This is a set I put together, I believe it's 18, yeah, because there's 18 wells in this palette. Forgive my dirty palette. I like to save some of the extra paint, especially this is one of my favorite colors, the peach black. Anyway, so yeah, we'll be swatching these. I'll give you the pigment information and talk about the colors and why I put this palette together like this. So we are starting off with cadmium yellow light. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of paint that got splotched onto this paper. This is a really nice cotton paper. This is the Zen watercolor paper, Zen Art watercolor paper, cold press. And it's the last piece in this block. I didn't want to waste it, so I want to do my swatches on it, but yeah, I tried to lighten this up a little bit with some water and blot it, but I think by the time we get to the end of the palette, I'll have the dark colors and it won't really make much of a difference. This is PY35 cadmium yellow light, and I'm going to swatch these generally wet into wet, except for this yellow, because the yellow is kind of hard to see anyway, at least for me. So I'll be doing like a water, like laying down some water and then dotting in the color so that you can see its movement. But this is just a typical cadmium yellow. So I don't really own a lot of, if any, like cadmium colors really. So I think one of the reasons I got it for this palette is because I didn't own any cadmium colors. It's a nice yellow. It's, you know, I think one of the reasons I don't own a whole lot of cadmium colors is because they're kind of opaque. And until recently, I didn't really appreciate opaque watercolors. So, get my water amount down, and I'm gonna have to tilt this paper to make sure I'm not getting it into the yellow. I might even have to feel that. Okay, there it is. I'm probably just gonna put 6 in each row here so that I can get all 18 on the paper. Sure, I'm in frame. Okay. Next color is quinacridone gold. This is PO48 and PY150. So your PY150 is your typical nickel azo yellow. And the PO48 is the pigment that a lot of people decided to use to replace the original quinacridone gold, which is PO49, discontinued pigment, which I believe the PO48 is starting to become discontinued, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why those pigments are so or not interchangeable, but like they keep changing it. Okay, so the next one is Brilliant Orange, and they have combined 2 orange pigments, PO62 and PO73. PO73 is like my favorite orange. It's the transparent pyrrole orange in a lot of brands. So we got some fair movement going on with the orange. And yeah, it's a deep, rich orange. The PO62 is a little bit more opaque than the PO73, but I like that they combined them. It's kind of a nice, you know, like guarantee that it's gonna be a serious orange. Okay, I gotta space these out a little bit better. Maybe make this one a little bit, I hope I have enough room. I don't want to run these into each other. Today's like not the greatest eyesight day. This is quinacridone scarlet, and it is PR209. If you're familiar with that quinacridone color for Daniel Smith, it is the quinacridone coral. And one of the reasons I, kind of like using the cotton paper for doing swatches is because you can really see what you're gonna get if, it's not just about looking at the color. You want to see the movement too. You want to see how it's going to disperse, how it's going to act with really good paper. And so I don't really mind sacrificing a piece of good paper for swatches. I used to not feel that way, but I do really prefer that now. Oops, I need to wet the paper first for this one. This is Pyrrole Rubine. PR264. And did I say PR209 for this one? I want to make sure I said PR, but it's because it's a red pigment. PR209 for the quinacridone scarlet. This is PR264. This one should move pretty good. Oh, I might have ran that into the next one there. I mean, that's not too big of a deal sometimes. It just kind of makes the swatches not very pretty. That is such a pretty red. Very, very strong. Next one is your quinacridone violet. Typical PV19. I think it's interesting that PV19 can go very pink or very purple, depending on, I don't know, I guess the way they process it. Never really understood that. Make sure I'm dipping into the right one here. This is quinacridone violet, PV19. It's a strong one too. You can see how these are moving Holbein frame here. Starting the second row. I believe this is Mineral Violet. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to make sure. Let me make sure. And I've almost not wetted the paper like 6 times now. Each time I almost forget. Yes, mineral violet. So this is a really interesting combination. PB29, PR122, and PBR25. So obviously you have the PB29 being your ultramarine blue, and the PR122 is quinacridone magenta. So you got this really nice, clean, bright purple. And then they went ahead and threw in PBR25, which is permanent brown in the Daniel Smith line. Okay, we got Rubine, quinacridone violet, mineral violet. And so the PBR25 kind of mutes it a little bit. And I think they're trying to mimic cobalt violet, because that's usually mineral violet. And see how, I mean, cobalt violet is kind of a low tinting color. So I think this was their attempt at creating a more saturated version of cobalt violet without the cobalt. And I do believe that I don't have any cobalt colors in this lineup. I have a few in other sets, and one of the ways that I curate my sets is by pigment, by pigments that I already own or want to try, and then still keeping with a balanced palette as far as the traditional colors go. That way I can kind of get a variety, and all my palettes are kind of similar, but they have different pigment choices, so I can, you know, get a variety. All right, I have to count from the Rubines so that I know which ones I'm at. Quinacridone violet, mineral violet. I believe this one is manganese blue Nova. That's what they're calling it. And when I got this, I was intrigued by the name, and I wanted to... No, this is just regular phthalo blue red shade, PB15. Now, they did not put a colon next to this, which I thought that phthalo blue red shade was :3. But it was not listed here. And I don't buy a whole lot of phthalos because they're usually included in most sets, and you know, who doesn't really have a phthalo when it comes to your basic set? So yeah, you can see this one's not moving a whole lot, and it's really highly pigmented like phthalo blues are. But this is why... Okay, so the manganese blue Nova, the one that I just mentioned when I thought it was this one, actually might as well be, because when I looked up the pigment information for it, and I don't know why I didn't realize this when I first bought it. I think I was just going by the name of it being manganese blue Nova, and that it was mimicking or trying to mimic manganese blue. So the really interesting thing about this is it's also PB15. And it doesn't have a colon either. So we have Rubine, quinacridone violet, mineral violet, phthalo blue, manganese blue Nova. interesting to see them together next to each other to see if they're any different. And yeah, wow, yeah. I mean, as far as, you know, first off, like first swatch, it kind of behaves like a manganese blue as far as it being really, really light. Similar to the way they were mimicking the cobalt violet. This would be like, you know, most mineral colors are kind of low tinting and granulating. This does not say that it has white in it, and I had assumed when I purchased, you know, something mimicking manganese blue Nova that it was going to have a white in it, and this does not say in the description that it has white. But I would, you know, I would almost bet that it does. Or they just processed it differently and it's just really low saturation. But you see they're very different and they both have the exact same pigments listed. So interesting. And the next one is one of my favorite pigments. It is, well, it's called Marine Blue in this lineup, but it is PB16, which is your phthalo blue turquoise? Yeah, phthalo blue turquoise. Ah, so pretty. Just a joy to look at. Next one, I believe, is Hooker's Green. It's really funny because when I'm looking up these pigments just to make sure that I'm gonna make sure this water is not like getting super dirty. I think it is. I'll be right back. Well, Hooker's Green is already like a combination of colors, so I don't think it'll affect it too much. I just making sure I have clean water now, but I'm gonna try to pick up some of that just in case, you know, we don't want it to affect the color too much. All right. Anyway, as I was saying, when I'm telling my phone to look up things, and even when I had tried to research Hooker's Green before, my Siri or whatever it is will say, I don't understand that question if I use the word, or she'll say, I don't know how to answer that if I use the word hooker in my question. So when I'm looking up Hooker's Green, I have to call it Hook Green so that it will like get me close enough that I could actually find it. And it'll show up if I say it like that. But if I say Hooker's Green, she'll just plead the fifth. She'll be like, I don't know how to answer that. And I'm like, lady, I am not asking you to. Anyway, what do we have for Hooker's Green? I believe it's a pretty interesting combo, actually. It's a pretty nice one. PG7 Classic Phthalo Green, PY110 and PY150. So PY150 is your nickel azo, and PY110 is, I'm Benzaldazzolone. I'm sure I said that totally wrong. Starts with an I though. It's not the benzimidazolone, it's the enzimidazolone. Yeah, so that's a 3-color combination for the Hooker's Green, which is typical for Hooker's Green. It's usually a combination of, you know, a phthalo and some yellows. I think the original Hooker's Green was phthalo green and gamboge. Or no, I'm sorry, Prussian blue and gamboge. That is the classic Hooker's Green. And it was invented by a botanist. Oh, did I not wet that first? We really want to see this one in water in action. Anyway, a botanical illustrator, not a botanist, a botanical illustrator was the inventor of Hooker's Green, and that's where we get the name Hooker, because that was his last name. I believe it was John Hooker. Anyway, we are on to Terra Verte now. Terra Verte. This is Earth Green, PG 23. And make sure I'm in frame for this. PG 23 and PG 17. PG 17 being your typical chromium oxide, and PG 23 is Earth Green, which they're actually very similar. A lot of people don't really like chromium oxide green because it's so like dull, I guess, or I don't know. I really like the earthy greens. They're like the green version of yellow ochre or something. Which brings us to our next color, which is yellow ochre. This is your typical yellow ochre, PY 42. Nothing special about this one. I was just trying to round out the palette, and I own enough yellow ochres. And I just wanted to see, because sometimes they're different. You get them between brands. This is a little on the more saturated, darker side. I think some of the lightest yellow ochre, or the lightest yellow ochre that I can think of would be like Winsor and Newton. This is a nice, normal, mid, like I said, nothing special, kind of yellow ochre. Next we have Jaune Brilliant, number 1. This is a combination of a cadmium yellow and a cadmium orange. So we have PY 37 and PO 20 and PW 6. I got this on a recommendation from, or not a direct recommendation, but one of my favorite artists was using this for, I guess for, you know, Caucasian skin tones or skin tone base. And she's an illustrator that I follow named Jacqueline De Leon. And I don't know, I was influenced by it. It was so it's an orange, yellow, and white. And I thought it would be something comparable to Naples. So that's what we, yeah, that's why I tried that one. That's why it's in here. Probably didn't need it, but I didn't own a Jaune Brilliant, and I heard Holbein's was one of the best. So next we have Indian Red, typical PR 101, Earth Pigment. I don't really have any other Indian, ooh, that's a very saturated Indian Red. I didn't have any other Indian Reds. Except for I think maybe in my Van Gogh palette because it came with it. But yeah, instead of, because their burnt sienna in the Holbein line is very, very brown. It's really saturated and kind of dark. So sometimes I like my burnt siennas kind of on the redder or the orange side. So that's why I got the Indian Red to round that out. And that's what we have next is burnt sienna. And I barely touched that. I didn't want to make it like super saturated because I wanted to show you guys the variation in it. But here, I'll give it a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's super hard to re-wet, but it seems to be a little bit harder to activate than the others. It is one of my favorite burnt siennas though. So next we have Van Dyke Brown. This is an interesting one because when I bought it, I don't remember thinking that this was any different than another typical Van Dyke Brown with a bunch of different pigments in it, but maybe that's why I got it, is because it was single pigment. Now the single pigment that it is NBR8. If you ever see the letter N in front of your pigment codes, it stands for the word natural, which is known to not be light fast because it is natural. Natural earth pigments sometimes, like in this case from lignite or peat moss, and another example would probably be indigo. So plant-based pigments are not as reliable as mineral-based pigments like you'd find in yellow ochre or burnt sienna. But it is a really nice color, and I like Van Dyke Brown because it has that grayish tone to it, almost like a raw umber. But yeah, NBR8. Let me know if you guys have ever heard of that one before. So I'm gonna go over here and just do like a really big swatch because this is like my favorite, one of my favorite colors of all times. It sounds so boring because it's just a black color, but it is an interesting pigment, extremely light fast, and it has color shifting capabilities. So this is Peach Black PBK1. Look at that. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love PBK1. If you're gonna do a monochromatic study, this is the most fabulous color to use. Because depending on how much you water it down or, you know, dilute it, you can get the most gorgeous value and tone variation. And I'm going to lift some of it so that you can possibly maybe see that. And I don't really see very well, but I did notice, and maybe, you know, people who can see better than me will notice more the shift in the color and how you can kind of see this like peachy pink showing up, especially after you've lifted it. I don't know, doing a swatch may not be the best example. Trying to do it in a painting is where you'll probably see it the most, but it's just such a, I don't know, something about it. I really like it. It's super granulating too. It's just got all the qualities. PBK1. So yeah, anyway, that is it for this swatch video. Flip it around this way so you guys can see it a little better. And I will see you in the next one. Let me know which palette. I have Mission Gold, Van Gogh, like a huge set of Van Gogh watercolors, and what was some of my other ones? Rosa Gallery, some Winsor and Newton, and my entire Daniel Smith palette. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any suggestions, which one of those to do next, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.